creating a friendship circle, a reader's circle, if you will, for myself as well. I am an introvert and I do like to be at home, but I also like to have a couple of really close friends. It's hard to make new friends when you've just moved and you're older and you're not hanging out with parents from your kids' class and everybody's so busy. And then the pandemic came. I'm really kind of missing that close group of friends. My mom's here and we're super close, but it's not quite the same. So for me, they're my substitute friends right now. I know that sounds kind of bad, doesn't it?
No, I get it.
Ellery, you're a loser.
Anne is my mother. That's how it is with us.
Right. My mom and I are like you guys. We trade books and we analyze books and we give each other books as gifts. It's been a lifelong bond for us. I can't tell you, it's priceless.
Oh, it definitely is.
This is multi-generational. My grandmother was the same way.
Wonderful. I love that. My grandmother was more of like, I'm going to watch QVC for 24 hours. And we thought, oh boy.
This book highlights one of the age-old problems of censorship and banning of books. Do you think that's an issue in today's world, unfortunately?
I wish that it was a thing of the past, but it definitely is not. You know how you have certain hot topic buttons where even if people don't want to hear you talk about it, if this gets mentioned, you're going to go off. I am a super easygoing, non-conflict oriented person, but you start talking about banning books and I will turn into a she-devil in about 15 seconds. I think there's a long history for me of seeing different sides of this point. I'm a parent. I'm a former teacher. I have a master's in library science. I understand the arguments that are presented, but to me, none of them are acceptable. None of them can convince me that you should remove a book from a shelf and put it away in the dark. For the most part, parents are complaining about elements in books. That is their right to do 100%. I'm certainly not judging them. They can decide what their children read, but I don't think they get to decide what is available. I would never tell a parent, hey, you shouldn't let your kid read Charlotte's Web. Well, actually, I might tell a parent why. I might gently suggest the glorious things that they would discover in a Harry Potter or anything like that. But if they chose not to, that, of course, is their right and prerogative as parents. If every parent was listened to, the shelves would be empty because the complaints are so wide, from language to characters to moral issues to religious issues. I mean, we wouldn't have any books. And that is my greatest fear. When that happens, we are a Ray Bradbury society. And that's not where we want to go. And an interesting statistic, just that this is talking 2019 here, PBS did The Great American Reads, and the number one novel on there was To Kill a Mockingbird. And I'm sorry, that is an amazingly wonderful book. Okay, if you don't like it, that's fine. If you think that should be banned, that's great to have your opinion, and I respect everyone's opinion. But every year, that book is in the top 20 list of books that people want to be banned. Interesting two sets of stats. It's the number one favorite book in one of the biggest surveys on American literature. And yet, year after year after year, people try to censor that book. I don't get it. I mean, it makes me want to throw my hands up in the air and go, how? Really? I deliberately make sure I have banned book titles in all of my books as recommendations, because if there's one person who maybe tries it and then realizes later, oh, I would have never read that book because I heard it has this and this and this, but then ends up loving it, that would be such a wonderful triumph for books.
And now that you've brought up the books that Nora recommends, part of the series that I just absolutely love, and I actually write down some of these, are her ability to heal through bibliotherapy. I just think that's fascinating. Is that something that's really used? And how do you come up with the books that you do recommend?
Here's the funny thing. I thought that I was super brilliant and had invented this. I'm totally not super brilliant and have certainly not invented it. As a matter of fact, bibliotherapy has been around since ancient Egypt. Ramses II had a library, and glyphs over the library entrance translates to the place for healing. the first instance of the thought that if you come into this library, of papyri and scrolls and such, that you would find healing, not knowledge, not entertainment, but healing. That's the first expression of that. But it has been used since ancient times, and I don't think it's been part of our lexicon until the 20th century. And in the 20th century, they started using bibliotherapy for veterans who were suffering from PTSD or soldiers who had been wounded. In World War I in England, they were going around to wounded soldiers' bedsides and saying, we've got this, and this book for you to read. What would you like? And it was fascinating because these young men wanted to read adventure stories. But they were adventure stories like Rudyard Kipling would write in exotic locations where they were bushwhacking and finding treasure. It took them away from their pain. It became an actual program in Britain to help heal wounded soldiers. From there, it has progressed to being used in Head Start programs, in mental health facilities. I hate the term troubled teens, but just to help out teens who are facing certain challenges. And the thing is, it's not always called bibliotherapy, but for those of us who have always used books to help ourselves, we recognize that that's what it is. And there actually are a few practicing bibliotherapists. I looked this up, and I think there were like 3 in Manhattan the last time I looked. And I don't know how it works when you go for a session with them. I find that extremely fascinating, but also extremely practical. Now, obviously, a list of books is not going to cure cancer, but it may help you cope with your cancer experience. You gals have both been bibliotherapists, and you don't realize it, but every time that someone has said to you, I'm in a slump, I'm not feeling reading anymore, I need something that's going to be uplifting, and they'll describe to you what they're looking for. And I bet there have been hundreds of times where you've gone, well, try this. And then they've come back to you later and said, that was it. That's what I needed. That's all bibliotherapy is. It is getting a title to somebody, the right book in their hands when they need it. And sometimes it's not the right book for the same 2 people, but a book you read 20 years ago that you now read again, you don't like it anymore. The book didn't change, you did. So books, they're so fascinating because they never really age out. You know what I mean?
No, they don't.
And as far as the ones Nora picks, I really try to make sure that I only use books in bibliotherapy that I've read. So I have read all of the books that I mention, except some of the nonfiction titles. So sometimes I will mention some more self-help oriented books, but my stepmother is a therapist, and I'll often talk to her about, well, if you had a married couple who was going through a hard time, what's your go-to book right now? And I really trust her. So if she gives me a title, look it up and I'll read about it, but I won't necessarily read. I do read everything that I recommend. All the titles that are in the first 4 books so far, I've read them all.
One of the things I always look forward to in your books is your description of the window displays that Miracle Books has for different seasons and events. Are these ones you have seen used?
I make them all up, and I would love to have a bookstore so that I could design window displays. I've got bookstore in my Book Retreat series too. That's Eloise's bookstore, and she has window displays too. So I get to kind of design these window displays between 2 different series, and I never get tired of it. It's maybe in another life I will be a bookstore owner. Now I'm going to have to settle.
Just a bookstore window display designer.
Right, or just a window display designer.
There you go.
Right. I think I would end up like locking the door and say, I'm just going to sit here and read all the books and not let anybody in because I want the space and the coffee smell. And I think I would actually really enjoy being a bookstore owner. I wouldn't want to worry about the money side of it, which is, I think, a significant worry.
Yeah, after my dad passed away, my mother moved to New Hampshire, and she opened a used bookstore.
Oh, fun.
Oh, I still have memories of the smells in there.
Oh, I bet.
The books were they were so much fun because I could go in and take any that I wanted.
Could you pick them out? Just kind of like, these are the treasures I want this visit?
Yes, definitely.
Heaven.
Nora is a very interesting protagonist, and her backstory is sad. Did you have to do research about burn victims and phantom limb syndrome?
I did. Luckily, because my husband worked at a large hospital, I'm able to interview doctors. They actually asked me, do you want to come take a tour of the burn unit? I have to say I was too wimpy. I'm kind of super sensitive, and I think that I might not be able to recover from that for a long time. And the idea of having her be a burn victim actually came from a firsthand experience of just something that I witnessed. I was with my kids at this it's called a tomato festival. You know how so many small towns have fruit or vegetable themed festivals, and they have little rides and vendors and food stuff. And it's just a cute family activity. We had gone to one of these, and unfortunately we were in line for the funnel cakes, and a young woman tripped, and the oil for the funnel cake got all over her.
Oh no.
And she was a high schooler. She was a cheerleader. She was straight A student, just a beautiful girl. I will never forget the sound of her pain. We followed her in the newspaper, and everybody who was there wanted to donate because she was going to have a very, very long road. I thought about her. What does the rest of her life look like now? She's going to have to completely go down a different road. And even though she was a high school girl, she was kind of my inspiration for Nora, just this person who was so talented and then had been completely derailed. And I guess I wanted to make her a hero, but I just didn't want a high school hero. I wanted a much older one. So that's where Nora came from, was me being at that little fair and unfortunately witnessing this young woman's accident that are beyond just the external scarring and stuff like that. It's just, there's stigmas, there's people staring at you, there's worrying about sun damage. And, I just think that any time that I do research about another person's possible circumstances, it just makes me more empathetic. That's kind of my goal, is just to write these books that, yes, make people feel good and yes, entertain them, but to just kind of say, look, everyone's going through something. Let's all just try to be as kind as we can be to each other.
I absolutely love how Nora's pinky vibrates.
Right? She's a natural tingle.
Where her missing finger is. I just think that's really clever.
Well, my husband works at a VA hospital. The phantom limb thing might only be for major limbs, but apparently it's just for any part of your body that was once there and is no longer there can have these phantom sensations. I've heard all kinds of stories from these folks, that sometimes it's affected by weather. Sometimes it is sort of a premonition that they get from things. I mean, I thought, again, Nora was original, but she's not. She's not people.
Are you working on any new books at the current time?
I am actually working on the next Secret Book and Scone Society novel. I am really enjoying it because it's the book collector side of me gets to take front and center stage for this one. I really love collecting books, and I love beautiful book design. Particularly fond of the book design from the turn of the century, the Art Deco and Art Nouveau movement. Again, I'm kind of focusing on women who are doing something maybe outside of the box. So the kind of the first women who got involved in book design and how difficult that was for them, and also the beautiful books they designed. So I also learned that it was a thing in the late 19th century and early 20th century to sometimes put little codes in book covers. So I thought, beautiful books with codes. I could use that. That's what the next one's going to be focused around. And there's going to be a big shocker when it comes to Estella. Some things are going to be shaking up for Nora too. So we can't let these people be complacent. I got to mess with them.
Maybe a little more romance in her life?
Or maybe a different one.
Oh. Now you've really compelled me.
Now. See, I was upset when certain things happened in this book that I won't say because it'll be a spoiler. I was happy at the end.
Well, I can't let you stay that way. That's just wouldn't be.
I'll just have to wait, I guess.
Can you give your website so our listeners can find you and your books?
Oh, of course. So I'm at www.recastelleradarams.com. ElleryAdamsMysteries.com. I do have reader's guides posted online for anyone who wants to use them for book clubs. If you'd like to see all of the